I'm very pleased to for a whole year stuck to our press conferences. I know that for a while there was a thought that maybe we would start this as a monthly thing and by month 3 it would fall off. But I want to say thank you to everybody, especially the media, that has kept on coming back every single month with good questions and ensuring that we continue to have a relationship of transparency and accountability with all of our constituents. So I just figured that for this final press conference of the year, that maybe City Manager and I could just go through a little recap of some of the key things that have happened in our community. I would say that one of the key things that happened in our community was that even though we are looking already at the 2019 budget, this year we were able to balance a budget and do several negotiations with staff as we had several of our unions, and we still have one of our unions that we're negotiating with. I think that another keystone of our community this year has been the fact that we have been able to come together. We had a Heartland Visioning meeting last Friday, and Commissioner Cook and I were talking about the good relationships that we've been able to have throughout the year. You haven't really seen that in the past years with city and county. There's always been a little bit of a tension, but this year we really have been able to work together quite well. One of the other big things that happened in our community, aside from those key issues, was we ended up having some really difficult conversations in our community with regards to matters with the police in our community, and it's been amazing to see how the police have stepped up and to see how we have really dug into our community and really built better relationships, and just seeing that transition from going from the very stressful times to just coming back to our community and just having people work together. I think that is a really big marker of a very healthy community, where we can have discussions in which we may agree and disagree and still be able to say we're still going to work together because we believe that it's in the good and in the best for everybody. We heard a lot of our constituents telling us that they wanted to see the roads get worked on, and our constituents, 60-something%, I think it was, that they passed the Fix Our Street tax that would enable the city of Topeka to go back into these maintenance projects that we had and start working on repairing our roads even more so. So just some of the minor things. Another big thing for our city is the fact that we are so appreciative to the Bloomberg Harbor City Leadership Program that selected the city of Topeka. Not only do we have City Manager Trout, but we have Jason Peak. And now we're sending 8 other individuals from the city of Topeka to get training so that we could build the capacities in our communities, so that all of our leaders that are really engaged in our city and seeing through our goals and our aspirations of ensuring that every single person in our city has the ability to succeed, have now the tools to keep that going. On the front of Momentum 2022, we said goodbye this year to Commissioner Shelley Bueller. Commissioner Bueller, we appreciate you. It's going to be odd not having you, but we do welcome Commissioner Rippon to the team. And we've transitioned in Momentum 2022. The leadership this year was Commissioner Bueller, Keith Warda, and myself. But now this year, replacing Commissioner Bueller will be Kevin Cook. And Commissioner Cook will take the place of the county. And we look forward to doing the great things that we're doing. One of the questions that I received on Twitter was, what are we saying that is concrete to ensure that we are working towards ensuring that Topeka is a city with equality for all? And I think that one of the exciting things that Momentum 22 leaders are doing is that there's an evaluation ongoing right now with regards to which corporations are going to get incentives. And one of the things that we're looking is, what's going to be our threshold? Are we going to give incentives to a company that's going to pay $7 an hour, $7.50 an hour? And the answer is no. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to provide incentives to companies that are going to come into our community and bring about good jobs for all of our citizens. The other thing that we're doing in that area is, just yesterday there was a ribbon cutting at Antioch Life Center, where we're going to have the East Topeka Learning Center, which is the Washburn Tech East campus, start, which is another way that we are going to provide our citizens, every single citizen, the opportunity to achieve some education so that they could get a better paying job. And that's one of the things that we have been talking about this whole year. Everybody has been talking about, hey, the unemployment rate is only 3%, everything is great. Well, let me tell you, And it's not great, because what we're not talking about is the underemployment rate that not only we have in our city, but that we see nationwide. And what we talk about underemployment is all of our hardworking families that are making maybe $10, $11 an hour and are having to work 2 full-time jobs in order for them to be able to maintain, which doesn't provide an amazing quality of life. And it doesn't allow time for important things. Ask me, I work 90 hours a week. So, but I think that we are talking about all these things. How do we provide education? How do we partner with Topeka 501? And how do we strategize our economic development strategy so that when we're bringing in companies, they really are adding something to the fabric of our city? So those are pretty concrete things that we've been talking about. We're looking forward to another year. It's incredible to think that Momentum 2022 is coming up, because next year is 2019. So a lot of things happening. I'm sure that I'm going to get asked about this. Another thing that we did was we had Evergy and CapFed provide $5 million, $2.5 million each this year for the construction of the plaza. The hoteliers are taxing themselves $1 per night of stay for individuals that are going to stay in their hotels, so that we could have programming for that plaza. We had Iron Rail open this year. We have Osiris that now has a sign up there and is making our downtown look a little bit different. So there's things happening throughout all of our city. I do understand that today we're going to be asked about the mall, because I was just given some news with things that are happening at the mall. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that JADO also, and we approved the additional $1.25 million for the plaza. There was some additional funds, $600,000 approved for NOTO, $53,000 that were approved for Auburn Washburn, for the Auburn district, for some play equipment outside, and then the Jayhawk is also going to receive $53,000 from the JADO funds. So I think that when you look back at our year, we have done some things that I think are pretty good. My definition of good government is not so much that you think of the city when something is not going right, but that you just are able to wake up in the morning and do your every single day duties without really concerning yourself with the things that we are not being there for you at. And I think that this administration has really prided itself on figuring out how we're going to keep improving. And I think City Manager is going to talk a little bit about that, so that we could just provide you good service. I just want to thank our citizens that have been there with us for the first year. I want to thank our chiefs that we have here, Chief Cochran and Chief Duke, who are very present, not just as leaders in the public safety arena, but you see them everywhere in the community. And the relation that they both have with Sheriff Jones is just amazing. Just again, just showing the kind of culture that we have in our city. And then lastly, before I pass remarks to the City Manager, I would like to introduce Trey Brooks, who is the new mayor's executive assistant. If you guys want to shoot some questions at him, he's free game for you guys. He's not happy with me probably right now. But I want to say thank you to Trey, not only to Trey, but to Margot and to Vicky. Margot is now working with Gina at the library, and I am very happy for her. And Vicky Buning was here helping me out just because she's awesome, and she had done it for the mayor, and she had been the constituent service person for Governor Sebelius. But when Governor Kelly got elected, it was just like, hey, your loan is done. So she has been helping with that transition, and it's been wonderful to have Trey on our side. Trey is a veteran in city business. He's been working in the Department of Neighborhood Relations for a while. He's a volunteer. He believes a lot in helping the transient community. He's part of the Homeless Count. So I know that we have somebody in our office that is going to be ready and engaged to do some pretty awesome things. So to those citizens that there were mix-ups because I was not having somebody there to support me and my calendar was not 100% being maintained, like the Tennessee Town NIA and Notoma, there were some confusions with the calendar more than once. I want to say I'm sorry publicly, and I am looking forward to working with you guys now that we have somebody that's really supporting me to manage the beast of my calendar.
Well, thank you, Mayor. You know, for me, I think the things that I think about are the many things that we've accomplished with the city since, as we look at the year. You talked a lot about the external things that are going on, and you look at what's been going on with staff, quite a bit. Chief Cochran took over, made some transformations within the police department. We've had a good year if you look at our statistics. It's been a good year. They've been very active both in the neighborhoods and in the process of apprehending those that are doing illegal activities. So things are going well there. Fire department's been very active. Many of our departments have been making changes. Planning and zoning have been making changes within regards to updating their codes and getting things done. So we're really trying to make sure that we are the best prepared that we can be for providing services to the citizens. And we have more to come. We've been working, we've been building up to tonight. I'm going to be talking about rapid process improvement. Rapid process improvement is a lean initiative type system that can be used in order to improve our processes, and staff has embraced it, and we have training facilitators, and we're going to be moving forward with analyzing everything that we do to make sure it's the best that it can be. And so we're excited about getting that done. I think it's really the next step for us related to the work that we're doing here in order to be the best that we can. And so I'm excited about getting that moving forward, and we'll do more come tonight from that initiative. I think that's probably where I'll stop.
Well, just jumping off that really quickly, as we're coming to the year's end, and I realize this will be a lot of recap from what you just said, but could you maybe give me just the top 5 accomplishments you both have had from this past year? Just top 5, maybe.
Well, for me, I think definitely one of them was coming on the heels of what happened with Dominic White shooting, us moving forward, working with the Department of Justice and getting the SBCP event held, and then that ongoing now, still working on trying to address issues like that. I think that was a big step, needed to happen in the community. We're happy that the Department of Justice came along and partnered with us on that. I look at some of the changes that we made within our code, and a couple of them that will be coming are big changes. You know, they may seem like they're procedural items, but they really set us up for having a town that appears well. And I think also, you know, just the level of diligence that we're seeing from staff, I think that's definitely something that's impressive.
I think that is a big one for me. I've always said when I go and I speak nationally, it's a lot of people ask me, so you got elected, you were the first minority, you were the second woman. What's your biggest challenge, and what was your defining moment of being elected mayor? And I think that it was getting elected as we were hiring a brand new city manager, as we had just gotten permanently our fire chief, and as we were trying to get a brand new chief of police that was really going to define what the outcome of our community was going to be in the wakes of the fatal shooting of Dominic White. And I don't think that anybody is prepared to have the level of stress and community input that we had. And I think that the learning that I had to do in order for me to understand where our community was coming from, and not just where they were coming from, because I think that one of the bigger issues was really not what was happening here. It was what was happening at a national level that people were trying to bring light to. Having read books like The New Jim Crow, Just Mercy, just really provided me a skill set and an understanding of things that I probably lived completely oblivious to. And then going with my kids to see The Hate You Give. And one of the things that I was doing with my public narrative class with the Harvard team was we're supposed to give at the end of the class a speech, and actually it was all about that, and asking the other mayors around the country to read the books, the New Jim Crow and Just Mercy, and to go watch the movie The Hate You Give, so that we could talk about that. Because I think that we have a national issue that was brought to us so that we would deal with it before something bad happened. And our police department have been amazing at saying, absolutely, we want to learn, we want to come alongside our community. That was huge. It really has shaped a lot of how I see things in our community. I think that the other thing that I want to celebrate is the fact that, you know, as we were going through all of these challenges, coming in as a mayor, I really wanted to ensure that I still had contact with the community at every level. As a mayor, it's very easy for you to have contact with the business sector because the business sector comes to you. But I wanted to go a little bit further than that, and I think that there was a question on, you know, how I was going to get this job done while having a full-time job. And for this first year, I have traveled extensively for the mayor's office, representing the city of Topeka. And I want to make it clear that I have been representing the city of Topeka everywhere I go. It really hasn't been about representing myself. And I've learned so much. And in that process, I've been able to still re-engage with the community.
Sorry, guys.
Everything from going to different NIA meetings like Oakland and having, I think it was 6 neighborhoods that I hit on National Night Out. And just being able to do like the Ripley Park event that we did, sitting down with the families and now working with the county and working with ACP so that we could fix the park as the citizens wanted. And just the team of people that I still have around me. I think that at this point in time, almost 2 years in after a campaign, you lose most of your volunteers. The group that calls themselves M4T, which is the campaign group, is still working, and there are a bunch of community volunteers: Jennifer Getz, Nicole Revenoff, Ryan Bishop, Mickey Bircher, and I could keep on going. Will Nager. We have a group of people that still are coming together to do things in the community. So I think that that's a huge success. I think another success has been the plaza. We've been trying for years, since 2008, when we were doing the Capital District project. We were talking about the things that we wanted to see downtown. And when you look at downtown today and you compare it to 2008, it looks really different. And when you look at what's going to happen in the next year, it's going to completely change even more. And the impetus of all of this is that now we're talking about quality of life as economic development. We didn't do that because we understand that if we want to bring people and we want to keep our young people, we have to provide them something. So I'm sorry, there's just so much. I think that there's so much that's so important, but I think that those are some of the big highlights for us.
One of the big things that you guys have talked about, especially in regards to the police department, is creating a position for looking at use of force. Has that position been created and filled yet?
It hasn't been created or filled. We actually have a meeting next week related to that to finalize some of the details as to what we want in the position, and looking at moving that forward. So there is a meeting coming up next week internally with staff in order to fully develop that.
Talking about the plaza, going over, kind of bouncing back and forth between topics. Then we had a report that several of the leases at the mall are not going to be renewed, as I told you earlier. And then on top of that, you've got this big downtown project. Is there any thoughts as to trying to drive some of those businesses that were in the mall? Mind you, they are chains. They prefer mall type settings, but obviously that is not working. Is there any way, or is there any plan to try to retain some of those businesses, move them downtown or other parts of the community?
So I will share with all of you that when I was in Miami during the Mayor's Institute on City Design, we had Bob Gibbs, which is one of the utmost individuals that understands retail. And one of the things that he shared with all of us was that 30% of the malls in America are going to close. 30% of the malls in America are closing. And what's happening now in communities is that communities are starting to develop what they call the corner shops within the neighborhoods, bringing back their downtowns. Because there was, just like in Topeka, and we often think that we're the only ones that go through this, but many times you have these communities that have very thriving downtowns, but as people started moving into the suburbs, the era of the malls started. But now, the economy is changing. Most people are doing their shopping experiences online. So malls are suffering. So what people are looking for now is for that unique, engaging experience that only a downtown can provide. So the fact that the mall, this is happening with the mall, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy about it. I think that it's time for us to try to continue trying to communicate with Washington Prime, so that we can see what work we can do together so that we can salvage that area and make it an attractive place. But what's happening nationwide is that those mall spots are becoming residences. And rather than being a big mall, what's happening is those big places are now turned into apartment complexes and townhouses that also have 1 or 2 retail operations with restaurants, but they're very small. It's more of a town center type of feel. And more than likely, based on what you guys are telling me, I'm hoping that this is a direction that the mall owners are going to take. But I absolutely, after you guys sharing this with me, we are gonna follow up and get in touch with them to see if that is their plan. For the city overall, I don't think it's a horrible thing in the sense that we know that retail is going online, whether we like it or not, which is why it's so poignant that the state right now is taking a look at the Supreme Court decision and us figuring out how we are going to, as a state, start capturing some of the taxes that are happening online, because it's really affecting all of the communities across the nation. So we will deal with this one to see as it comes, but it's a challenging thing for this sector of the community, but it's also a positive thing for the downtowns because people are coming back to the downtowns.
One local business owner has spoken with Washington Prime, and it seems like they've just given up, and they plan on turning it over to the bank. And they get into a legal issue with foreclosure potentially. Not saying that's what's gonna happen, but as we know how the process works. If that's the case, how difficult could it be trying to spearhead something like turning the mall into a residence or reallocating the mall to different types of business?
Well, I don't know enough about corporate business, and I don't want to speak for Washington Prime. I can tell you that Washington Prime spoke with us a while back, and they were telling us that our mall has some of the highest foot traffic counts that they had in the region. We are capturing people from Emporia, we're capturing people from Holton, we were bringing in people from different areas coming into Topeka. This is very different from the conversation that we had, and I want to give them the benefit of talking to us and telling us what their plans are before I infer something that may not be correct.
Another thing when it comes to, again, the downtown development, there are a lot of empty businesses, again, downtown. What is there in this, what is your position on incentivizing having businesses move in to these empty storefronts downtown?
Well, when we look at doing any type of incentive, we definitely have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Incentivizing retail is a very difficult thing to consider for a local government. And so you have to make real good decisions. When you're talking about incentivizing, such as providing a community improvement district, a CID, that can be beneficial from the standpoint of they're going to make improvements that increase the value of that particular area, such as if you have a strip mall that makes a decision to create a CID, they make investment, it keeps that from declining, which is what we need. We need to make sure they're making an investment. It's a tax really on their own customers, and they're using that money to make an improvement. And so therefore, you look at those as being good opportunities for the city to make improvement. When you look at a downtown area, it gets a little harder to look at those types of incentives, especially if you start talking about restaurants. It's really about a fair, making sure that the decisions are made in a fair way as to who you're assisting and who you're not. And so when you look at retail, especially restaurants, those types of things, it's very difficult for us to think about incentives. And there, however, are different types of incentives. If you go through Topeka, Greater Topeka Partnership has some incentives that help small business in order to get started, especially a minority or disadvantaged business owner. Those types of things exist, and there are opportunities for them to be able to access some funds in order to get started. So we have some programs, but you just have to be very careful about how you implement them.
We try to get rid of, we're trying to steer clear of the larger chain businesses and focus on smaller businesses?
No, I think those, you look at the way capitalized, larger businesses are very capitalized and have the opportunity to look at something like that. Oftentimes too, when you're looking at a CID, say for a strip mall that has a big box there, you're dealing with a developer, and that developer is who receives the CID money in order to make the improvements. They're doing long-term leases with these major retailers in order to accomplish that. But those major retailers won't come if they don't have a nice-looking storefront. So by giving an incentive to that property owner, they'll make the improvements, which will then attract the particular type of thing we're looking at in order to keep the big box stores filled. And so those are the ways that we find that we can be helpful for driving growth in the community.
Do you think the plazas, I'm sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
we could follow on this. Do you think the plaza is gonna help attract some of that business, some of
Yes.
those bigger chains? And if so, when could we start seeing the benefit of having a plaza downtown?
I think that we are already seeing some of that benefit by doing the events that we do downtown and the festivals that we do. What the plaza provides for our community is a twofold approach. It provides a place for people not just to come because there's an event, but it provides a place for people to come and congregate when they're downtown. Like in the spring, for example, people typically go and walk around the Capitol building. Now they have a place that you go to the Iron Rail, you want to sit down and you just sit under a bench and you just sit there and you watch the water show going on and you have a place that you could just relax there. In addition to that, we also have a place where everybody in the community can come. So like you don't have money to take the kids to a movie, but well, guess what? You could bring them at night in the hot summer and they could just get wet in the splash pad and maybe grab an ice cream, from one of the shops right there. It provides a place. So nowadays, with the onset of online, the Internet of Things that we have happening every single place, people are looking for places to connect. They're looking for placemaking. And that's what the plaza provides for the downtown. So the plaza is just one of the components. Yes, it's going to add, because it's going to have a place where we could have programming much more than just one or two weekends in the month, which is what we're currently doing. Because now the plaza is going to have not only, amenities for you to stay cold, but it's also going to have the torches for you to stay warm and to do more events more regularly, which is going to bring people. When you create that density, it's going to be good for the businesses. So that's one of the ways that works. But you have to create it at two prongs. So not only do we have the density that we're creating by the events coming to the plaza and pushing foot traffic up and down the avenue, the next thing that we're also doing is working on building more capacity of housing downtown. As you see, we have more lofts coming on board, and that's how you create more density, and that's when you're gonna start really having people coming in, because there's a density that they're looking for.
I think we're almost done with the mall questions, but if the mall closes, how much might we stand to lose in tax revenue?
I can't give you that answer.
And you mentioned, of course, that we're looking at ways on getting some tax revenue off of the online sales, because there's a lot of that going now. People are just shifting away from brick and mortar to
Absolutely.
online sales. All right, and right now, there's no plan that you all have to maybe try to keep them all open, is that?
Well, like I said, you guys brought me the news this morning about what you guys have heard. I'm absolutely reaching out to Washington Prime and seeing what's going on, and I hope that they pick up a friendly phone call.
Okay.
Water main breaks are at its third-time highest. 800 water main breaks is what we're understanding compared to last year's 300. What's being done to work on this issue?
Well, primarily we're trying to solve where our worst lines are. As we do our planning for next year for capital improvements, looking at where we need to put an investment in. We measure that, we know the number of breaks that have occurred on various lines, and we tack the ones that are the worst as we move forward with our projects. And so that's primarily the best way we can do. The existing conditions are there. It's very little that we can do to change what's going on underground with the pipe that was put in 75 to 100 years ago. And so for us, it's really about making determinations and good investments in the areas where we are seeing the worst problems. And we're analyzing that data on a yearly basis. We collect it, and then when we go to make decisions with our capital investments, we analyze that data in order to be able to make decisions. And we're looking at, I think the last number is a little over 2 million to 3 million that we're putting in and replacing lines on an annual basis. More to do in that area, but that's where we're at right now.
So, because I was so impacted by this number, when I went to the Mayor's Institute on Smart Cities, I shared with City Manager that was my project, is how do we create a predictive analytics model so that we can start quantifying and gathering information on what year was this installed, what materials were used, what was the weather patterns, who was the individual that put it in, so that we could have all that information and start looking at all of our water mains and all the lines that we have, and then start going back and saying, okay, these makers started failing at this point in time, so therefore we can start predicting when the next lines are going to fail. So that's one of the things that we've been talking about, to see how we could use data in a more predictive way. a little bit more like a business, so that we don't have to be as reactive, because both of us were talking about how this was something that it was big. It was a significant amount of breaks, and we recognize that.
Mayor, the news came out last week that Topeka was passed over for a company that had 500 jobs because they said there was not enough population growth. Is that a concern? And City Manager, you can chime in on this as well. The other question along that line is, if you had one priority looking into 2019, one thing you would like to accomplish in that year at this point, what's your top priority? So those are two questions for you.
So I would say absolutely it's a concern. If it wouldn't be a concern, we wouldn't be talking so much about quality of life and quality of place. I think that when we take a look at the way that we're looking at economic development and looking at what makes other cities thrive is placemaking. Nowadays, people don't look for a job that they're dreaming of and say, oh, this is the job, this is the place that has the job, and after I get the job, I'm gonna move. Nowadays, people say, oh my God, this place has the weather that I love, and I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna survive in that place, and they move there. It's a completely different way of looking at communities. One of the things that, again, through the training that I've been doing, most communities are gonna move. There's a massive urbanism happening in the nation. So most people who are in rural communities are going to look at different cities, and they're gonna start moving into cities. So if we don't do something so that we have an attractive place and we don't grow our population, we're gonna stay in the same place that we're at. And whereas in the coast, if they don't grow their population, they're okay because they have massive numbers of density of people that are providing a significant amount of tax revenues, they can deal with that. But we as a community in the Midwest, we can't do that because we have the same challenges that the coastal cities have with a smaller pool of resources. So we need to create a quality of place that is attractive. I often talk about our city as being a place where people crave to be, which is why the riverfront to me is so important, which is why the plaza in downtown is so important. These are center investments that will allow for other people to come into our community. So quality of life, quality of place are crucial. They are economic development, they are tools for growth. But in that same breath, if I were to talk about what I want to see done next year, I want a housing trust fund. I want a housing trust fund. Did I say that? I want a housing trust fund. We cannot continue depending on the federal government to provide us the support that we need to create the housing that we need in our community. We need to grow our housing stock, not just the low-income housing stock. We need to start looking for other creative ways and bringing in additional funds so that we can start tackling the central part of our city and the infill and creating middle-income housing that people that are working regular jobs are able to afford so that they can have a house of their own. And the only way that we're going to do that is if we start getting creative, and instead of just completely saying, this is what I want to have, let me wait to see if the federal government gives this to me, let's create something that completely self-grows. My dream of a housing trust fund is that it's an endowment, that we have some money come in, and that eventually we just use 50% of the interest of it, and then we put the other 50% into it so that it keeps on growing. And one of the tools that I want to bring up to the body in the next year is that maybe we take a look at our TIF district policies, and that we say that if we are abating for big developments, the taxes, maybe we include into that a small percentage that will go into a housing trust fund because we're abating those funds anyway, so that everybody in our community could grow. And that's one of my priorities for next year. Sorry, love that.
Well, actually, when you expand on that a little bit, you're talking about a trust fund, and that sounds like home ownership. But there's a lot of folks, especially in their 20s, starting off their careers, single, sometimes single parents. They are working for not the best wage in the world. They can't afford housing. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to maintain because they're working multiple jobs. How do we combat that then? Because what about apartment living, affordable apartment living, and then also the crime issue? Because when you get into lower income housing, there's also the statistic that crime rates go up. Not saying that's every case, but those are all the factors that people look at. So how do we combat all of those factors?
I think that part of having a healthy trust fund is that you also have some rental units. Like, for example, Topeka Housing Authority would absolutely be able to benefit from a housing trust fund. Habitat for Humanity would absolutely be able to benefit from it. It's not just a measure for you to build houses for home ownership. It's also for you to, for example, if there is a developer and eventually we have enough funds in there that we could say, hey, we could provide you a loan that is at a lower interest rate so that you could build some apartment complexes that are moderate income apartment complexes. So we will support you through a loan from the trust fund at a lower interest rate so that you could do those things. So again, it's not just creating low-income housing, it's making sure that we have different tools so that we can attract housing from all fields so that we could grow our population as well.
Mayor, are you frustrated at any time that things, I know it takes time to get these things, does it seem like it's moving too slow for you sometimes, or is it moving at your speed you think it should? Would you like to see things pick up a little bit in 2019?
You know, I think that no, we are moving at the right pace. I look back at what we're doing with Momentum 2022, and with the amount of people that we have working on this strategy. If we move way too fast without providing input to the public on why we're doing what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish, then we have more buy-in of our community. I think that even now, like for example, something that we've been talking about for years, which is the plaza, and talking about creating density downtown. I think that there has been a skewed point of view that, why are you doing all this? Why are you investing so much in this area? Well, because we want to create a quality of place. Why are we doing so much in the river? Why do we want to have a riverfront? Well, because it creates quality of place. And if we do that, we attract more people and the burden is less on everybody else in our community. So we need to have everybody understand why these things are happening.
One thing you mentioned, I'm going to go back to the housing situation again. As soon as we start talking about housing, I'm getting a lot of comments on my Facebook Live here. Cracking down on landlords who do not take care of their properties, blighting properties, because property values are going down because of these properties that are not being maintained, so on and so forth. How do we combat that issue? Because you got like slumlords, in a sense, the common topic. I mean, I've gotten 5 different comments.
Okay, so what I will tell people is please help us. City manager and I just had a meeting with the Shawnee County delegation with regards our desire to continue pushing through some support from the state with regards to us being able to take over properties. We can't do that. The same way that people came out and voted and changed some things in the public government, the state government has a huge hand on what happens at the local level. Not only with a lot of the way that we operate things, but also there's a big component in the public housing area. In addition to that, to public housing, Harvard is working with city manager, and we have a team taking a look at what's happening right now in our community with blight issues, and they have a task force working with them to see how we could come up with solutions, and you could probably talk a little bit about that.
Right. Harvard folks are going to be looking at the conditions that currently exist, looking at programs that they've seen utilized throughout the country, and helping us to determine what types of programs and efforts that we can consider that would make a difference within our community based on our set of conditions. This isn't a new thing. It's something that's going on throughout the country. And so there have been a lot of different people that have made efforts in these areas and that have made an impact in making things happen. We're also looking on top of that, we're looking at an elected building registration requirement, which would provide a registration that then involves the owner making a promise on what they're going to keep up within the building, setting a timeline for them to maintain the building, and if they don't, then there's a fine to go along correspondingly that forces them to either fix it or get fined. So we're looking at that kind of a policy, along with even tonight we're going to be having a discussion about the foreclosure, the tax sales that the county does, and the potential that looking at which ones we're doing, those then providing lots that are available for infill housing. The city recently passed the neighborhood revitalization program again with an extra emphasis on infill housing that allows us the opportunity to, instead of having a vacant lot within the community, evase the taxes so that someone that's building a new house has a little bit of a leg up regarding some of the expenses that go along with being new homeowners. So those are a few of the programs that we're looking at. We know that this is a major issue in tackling the housing issue. We're also looking at conducting a housing study to make sure that we get a full understanding related to what type of housing do we have, what are the conditions that exist, how affordable is it, where are the missing pieces that relate to what housing is needed, do we need more apartments, do we need less apartments? Are we good there? You know, where are the holes in our provision of types of housing?
City Manager, would you be so kind as to give us your top priority also for 2019? And then back to the other question, my other one, or two other questions for the mayor or both of you. The street, have we learned anything about our street projects? Some of them, it's an intersection that's taking 6 and 8 months, seems like, to get these intersections. Are we working on too many at one time? And the second one is, you were talking about you were in negotiations with a certain union at this point ongoing. Can you tell us about that at some point? But let me go to the mayor, or to the city manager first.
Well, as it relates to our projects, I don't think we're in the process of doing too many. I think what you found is we had good bids for each of the projects that we had this year. If you start seeing bids that come in well over their estimated cost from our engineering firms, then we're probably at saturation and it's being difficult for our contractors to keep up. We managed a lot of projects. All of our projects are going to be completed within the construction season this year, other than the one out in Clarion Woods, which we knew was a 2-year project. So we're on a good pace to be able to complete those projects. Obviously, we're excited about the weather we currently have in order to be able to wrap those up, but we're in a good spot, and I think that the numbers that we're looking at for the next couple of years for projects are also very positive, and we'll be able to get some good work done. And we want to make those progresses happen because the citizens just voted to support what we're doing. They like the direction that we're going, and so we want to make sure we continue that momentum on getting those projects done. Go back to what your other questions were.
What's your top priority if you were to have one for 2019?
I think for me, my top priority is to continue to make sure that our government and our operations that we have are the most efficient possible, and studying the processes that we do to make sure both they're effective and they're efficient. We need to do that in order to be able to provide the best service for our citizens.
And Mayor, what about the negotiations you were alluding to with the...
That's more in my area.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
My
we
mistake.
continue to work with a couple different unions related to completing contract negotiations, and so that's ongoing, and we'll hopefully complete those. The two outstanding ones that we have are our firefighters contract and our water employees.
And is there a timetable on getting those wrapped up?
Well,
or?
we've gotten through a number of steps and continues to move forward with fact-finding, and we're working through the situation related to that, trying to come to an agreement.
All right, thank you.
What are your guys' thoughts on the lawsuit filed for $2.7 million for falling through the gap on the Kansas Avenue Bridge?
Well, as we typically say, we don't comment on those types of things. It's litigation. Each side will present their case, and we'll move through the system and let it happen as it will.
Can you tell us if you've put up any warning signs there, or if you're planning to put any warning signs on the bridge just about that gap that's in there?
Not at this time.
I'm sorry, not at this time.
As far as the effort,
Yeah.
there's already information that's planted there. It's not an area where you cross.
Well, back to development. Can we actually talk about the White Lakes Mall, just because that's deteriorating? Do you know, what's the future for that right now?
Well, there has been interest in White Lakes Mall. We cannot get into, because of course it's an economic development game, and you know that all those things are private until something does happen. But we do have, I've had meetings. I know the city manager probably has had meetings with somebody that's very interested in the area, and hopefully we'll be able to see something happening there.
We've interviewed the person who's on contract to buy it, so we know who's on contract to buy it, but have they shared those plans to develop it at all? Can you talk about any of those plans? I mean, I know that they plan on completely leveling, except for that one section, and then they plan on maybe doing some kind of development for shopping, so.
Well, you would let me there.
Yeah, sure.
When we look at doing those kind of developments, they'll come and talk to us about what their plan is relative to whether they are interested in receiving a TIF or a CID assistance for incentive. We'll negotiate with them relative to what makes the most sense for that particular area. There's definitely possibilities for both as being good opportunities for incentives that we can do in order to help. Obviously, from the city standpoint, that's been an eyesore for a long time, and we want to do our best to be able to help make that dream that developer has come to fruition. So we'll work with them to determine the best incentive, and once we are able to negotiate that, then we'll bring it before the governing body. But some of those things take a period of time to accomplish, Not to mention that given the condition that the property was in as far as ownership, it takes a little time to unravel all that. And so when it's the right time, we'll move it forward.
You've got a pretty good relationship with that developer though, because he's the same developer that bought Miller West, the same developer who did the Orchlands and Academy Sports. I mean, this is what you're wanting to see. On top of that, this is what you're wanting to see more of, is
Absolutely.
working with those developers like this. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think that, that developer is a great example of a person that really cares about communities and wants to do right by our city. The thing that I don't want to do is speak for that developer. I want to make sure that when the plans are ready, the community will get to see them, because if they are going to come and ask for TIF or CID projects, they have to present us a whole plan. And at that point in time, when we reach that point in which that contract is approved, and I hope that it is so, then we'll start seeing some of the plans that they have, and the community will be able to participate in celebrating those plans.
You already talked about the issue of the declining population, and it sounds like one of the big things is just improving quality of life here in Topeka. And of course, you've got a few different projects, especially with the plaza, that sort of thing. I'm curious, do you have any other plans?
The riverfront. I think that one of the things that we are looking into right now is the riverfront development. We had a weird project that we wanted to get started. The city saved some money. Corps of Engineers gave us some money. And when we had the brand new bid for it, it came extremely high. So we're now working on that. We're trying to find additional funding sources so that we could make that happen. The way that I see the riverfront is like we have it's like the heart of a body, right? Because you have Noto on one side and you have the downtown, and the river is that center core. It's so important to me that this is the project that I chose for the Mayor's Institute on City Design. We had some awesome feedback that we are bringing now to the Riverfront Authority, and we have some resources that are coming to the city of Topeka, a lot in support from the Mayor's Institute on City Design to help us work on that and try to identify additional funding sources and try to figure out who do we need to bring to the table so that we could get that project going.
Mayor, what about your thoughts on that fire down by the homeless camp under the North Kansas Avenue Bridge last Monday morning? A lot of times people just kind of ignore the homeless. Obviously, there's people homeless living under there and down by the river. You come about the river. Any thoughts about that at all today? I know that did a lot of damage to the bridge too.
I think that it's very unfair to say that we forget the homeless, because I think that you look at what the city council has been doing. Councilwoman Ortiz just had a group of individuals who are homeless speak with regards to what we're trying to achieve as a community, because we understand that there are individuals that are homeless in our community. And I hope that everybody was watching that meeting. And if you really haven't had a chance, call or look up the city council meetings. But it's very impactful to hear the experiences that our citizens and individuals all around the nation have, that they had a life and then all of a sudden something happened and the depression caught them because they lost something huge, and they have the desire to no longer have a house structure. And when asked if they have the opportunity to go to the rescue mission or to do something else, that's not what the desire of their hearts is at this moment in time. And as a community, we have to be very cautious of allowing agency to these individuals, but at the same time, having the heart and the resources like the rescue mission and other community partners that are trying to help make sure that people are safe. So to say that we are, that we don't look at our homeless population, I think is an unfair statement. I think that we are working very hard to try to find solutions. One of the things that I get the most on Facebook is, hey Mayor, check this program that's happening nationwide, that people are giving jobs to people that are asking for money out on the street. And we're looking into doing something like this. I think that what happened under the bridge is tragic. I think that, it's just, again, part of the challenges that we have to deal with as a city, to ensure that everybody is safe. It's a huge expense to our community, and we will work with it, and we will continue working with Barry and with the committee that's looking forward to see what we can do to support individuals that are living in camps, so that we could, help them come up with an alternative housing situation. I am a huge proponent of tiny houses, even though our code doesn't allow it right now. But I think that, you know, housing first is always the answer. Housing first is always the answer, so that we could get people help. But we are coming to decisions as a team, and this is what the council is working on. You have Deputy Mayor Jensen that has one committee, and Councilwoman Sylvia Ortiz. So I would really encourage you guys to talk to both of them, because what they have discovered and what they're working on is pretty impactful.
I'm gonna bring up some of the comments that I got on Facebook Live, because I know that's why you also do it, but one of the things is one person says, I just don't see the need for the riverfront. Another person, in regards to that, says, unless they're building affordable rentals for people who need 3 or more bedrooms on the riverfront, I don't see a need for it. So some of the people who are watching, who are residents, are just like, why concentrate on the riverfront when we have the other issues?
Well, again, it's just the same thing that I said earlier in the press conference. We're investing and looking at investing into quality of life type of things so that we can have additional residents. When we have more population, our tax base increases without having to raise the taxes, which means that the more people we have coming into our community, the more people that are joining and funding the government sections that provide the resources for the families that want that house, that want to have those resources. So I know that for a lot of residents, they question sometimes, why are we doing some of these things? If we wouldn't have the downtown that we have right now, with the mall having the situation that you guys just presented to me today, imagine what would have happened if we would have had no core for people to enjoy.
One more question, we have another meeting at 10:00.
Oh.
Well, just one on Facebook Live here, somebody's asking about the transit pickup service and says that depending on where you are in the city, the rates differ a little bit. It could be about $15 a trip, depending on how far you are from a bus line. And of course, this person uses it because it's handicap accessible and gets them to the bus. They were just wondering if there's anything you all might be able to do to make the rate the same across the city, regardless of the distance a person is from the bus line that they'd be using.
Well, primarily when you look at that, it's done based on the cost of service. That is a point-to-point delivery, and so it's based on the amount of distance that's required, the travel based on the cost to provide that service. So, and I know that that's the way they've determined is the best way to fairly do it, to provide that service fairly to all, is to look at that. But it'd probably be best if you could talk to the Topeka Metro in order to get a better answer, but that's my understanding.
And I think that they are working on reducing that fee. There is, if you talk to Susan, when they did their presentation last week on the council, they were talking about providing accessible rides at a lower rate. So that's something that I know that they're trying to address.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
That's more interaction than I've seen.
And there's the wrap up of the Mayor and City Managers News Conference on Tuesday, December 18th, 2018 at City Hall. For more details on this, check out cjonline.com. Reporting from City Hall, Phil Anderson, cjonline.com.